Sundays of Sunny June, Book 2, Chapter 2 by Blue Bastard. Chapter Monday PM. There's a magic I can hold. It took all Sunset Shimmer's resolve to keep a calm at her appearance as he flew over the equestrian countryside in the sky chariot. Armored ponies beside her. The Unside City of Canterlot was quickly getting bigger on the horizon. Too quickly. Although she was doing her best to imitate her captor's hard exterior, inside she was screaming, I'm screwed! I'm screwed! I'm so screwed! Indeed, it seemed likely Princess Celestia would throw her in a dozen upon her arrival at the castle, or banish her, or perhaps some combination of the two. Of course, it's also possible that the princess would be merciful and grant Sunset a quick death. This thought didn't do much to reassure the young unicorn, as she realized with despair that if Celestia gave Sunset her well-earned punishment, she wouldn't be able to save Twilight from her nightmares. Instead, Sunset's strong facade cracked, and the once proud unicorn let out a whimper. It couldn't end like this. Not before Twilight was safe from whatever had haunted her. Sunset began looking around her surroundings, desperately searching for an avenue of escape. Captors remained unflinching as they sat around her, staring straight ahead. Sunset thought she might have recognized them. For a moment, she wondered whether they were the same guards she knocked out first before escaping through Platinum's mirror. He hadn't bothered to put in a chain hobbles or attach an inhibitor ring on her horn. It would be all too easy to simply teleport herself to the ground. Guards would give chase, of course, but the Everfree Forest was very close. Even Celestia's soldiers would know better than to follow her in there. And if they did, since they could probably knock them out, just like she had the last time, when they stabbed Celestia through the heart. That sobering thought shook all notions of escape from Sunset's mind. Even if she could escape, what then? She couldn't run from Celestia forever. Besides, she already had a run through the Everfree earlier that day. The thought of another suddenly became very unappealing. Sunset Shimmer was tired of running. So it was a surprising sense of calm that Sunset was led through the halls of Castle Canterlot to her likely doom. Feelings of nostalgia welled up within her at the familiar sights of the castle. The tall, vaulted ceilings, the shining marble floor, stained glass windows depicting battles of old. It was only when Sunset was led into the throne room that the fear itself began to resurface. Sitting on the throne of the long red carpet was Princess Celestia herself, flanked by a pair of guards. The Sword Diarch studied Sunset as he approached with careful neutrality, since they had come to know so well over her years as Celestia's protege, as her surrogate daughter. So you have returned, Sunset Shimmer, said Celestia, her voice showing no sign of anger, and no trace of happiness either. Her head was also raised slightly, so Celestia couldn't get a good enough look at the eyes of her former mentor to get an idea of her true emotional state. Have you set your sights on beyond a mere artifact of power, and instead seek other means to achieve what you have refused to learn through an honest means? Sunset found she couldn't talk. She couldn't look away. Couldn't do anything but let her legs tremble in place. But not because Celestia was suggesting she hadn't learned a thing in the 4 years, but because she seemed to be expecting it. It hurt to even have the Yankee season be a little more than a suggestion. But Sunset knew how much he had hurt the princess. It felt more than a little ironic to be back in the place where it all began. The halls of power she so very much wanted. That wanted nothing to do with it. Now she had a home on Earth, a family that loved her. Sinking guilt that had been given what she desired to have taken from her. Now she knew she had to ask for the goddess princess, one who could pass her to an eternity of solitude on the heavenly body of her choosing, forgive an offense that had gone deeper than any physical wound could. No, I have come seeking something far more valuable, princess. Celestia's eyebrow raised up slightly. Oh, tell me, what does this pony before me, who herself stated to desire not but power, seek that even surpassing Faust herself cannot compare to? As he finished speaking, she gave Sunset the courtesy to look eye to eye. Your help, Sunset said, bowing a little lower than she ever had in her life. She would have said your forgiveness, but Sunset didn't feel like pushing her luck just yet. The princess gave her former pupil a curious look, but retained her calm ire. Look, I don't blame you for assuming the worst about me. Lord knows I've done everything to earn your mistrust. Sunset started. So most things in her life, not thinking about what could come next. I know that I've earned whatever retribution you wish to bring out, but please, just hear me out. Sunset looked up at Celestia, who continued looking down at her without a readable expression. Sunset took her silence as a sign to continue, and swallowed the bile building up in her throat. Someone very close to me is suffering horribly. Whatever's hurting her is here in Equestria. I have to stop it! Sunset's eyes began to water at the thought of Twilight. The truck was buried down at her. Sunset blinked the tears away and took a calming breath. It wouldn't do to break down now. I ask, no, I beg you, let me do this one thing. Afterwards, she bowed her head low. I'll submit myself to your judgment. It seemed a long time before Sunset had the courage to look back up. Celestia was relenting in her gaze. Something in her features seemed to have changed. It was subtle, so subtle that any other pony might not have noticed. But Sunset Simmer had become very proficient in reading her old mentor over the years together. Princess Celestia's expression suddenly turned softer. Guards, leave us, Celestia ordered calmly. As you wish, your majesty, he replied, clearly uneasy, leaving the matriarch alone with Sunset. They were sworn to follow the orders of Celestia all the same, so they got their posts. You are different than last we were here, Celestia mused once they were alone. Tell me, Sunset, does the prospect of ascending truly hold no appeal to you? Of course it doesn't! Sunset's answer was immediate. Honestly, if I could take it all back, I would. Not a single day goes by that I don't regret anything I've ever done to hurt you. No amount of apologies in the world can ever fix what I did. But Princess, you deserve to know that I am so sorry. Princess Celestia did step down from her throne and approached her discreet pupil slowly. In an instant, she was no longer the supreme ruler of Equestria, but a mare who had left something precious to her, one who was grasping for her futility. I want to believe you, Sunset. Princess's voice suddenly seemed frail and vulnerable, features hanging low in a unregal manner. Sunset touched her throat where it was clenching up. Perhaps this was Celestia's punishment. The pain in her voice hurt Sunset more than all the fire in the sun ever could. I really want to believe you. The unspoken words hung heavy in the air around the two ponies, weighing them down, but I can't. Celestia then brought herself back to her full height, and Sunset found herself talking to the princess again. Nevertheless, I accept your apology. Now, if what you told me is true, an innocent life is in danger. I won't let what has come between us destroy whatever chance we have of saving it. So, for the time being, I withhold my judgment. Sunset let out a breath he wasn't aware she had been holding. Yes, he was still out to face Celestia's judgment eventually, but at least now she could go through her quest to save Twilight. Now, you look hungry, Celestia said, a slight smile cautiously finding its way across her face. Wasn't the warm motherly smile Sunset knew that she yearned for? It was still good to see. Let's discuss the rest of this matter over some lunch. Sunset nodded in agreement. It would be nice to eat some good equestrian cuisine again. As the two of them exited the dorm room, the cold dread in her heart began to dissipate. In its place, a small light of hope found its way through Sunset's mind as he thought maybe, just maybe, Celestia could yet forgive her. As it would turn out, Celestia had invited some pony else to the impromptu lesson with her and Sunset. Some pony who Sunset had absolutely sure she didn't exist. You didn't tell your student about your own sister, blurted out Luna. Well, what was I going to say, Luna? Retorted Celestia. That I had to banish my own sister when she got possessed by her own dark side. Then, to help calm the masses afterward, I made an annual holiday based around the idea of you eating candy tribute instead of small falls. I think, given that you were hoping Sunset would become, it might have been helpful to inform her about who she was actually taking on in the first place. I didn't tell Twilight, the one who actually fulfilled the prophecy, so I'm not seeing your point, Luna. Sunset nervously shrank back as far as she could from the verbally sprawling outer court of sisters, trying to enjoy her first taste of native cuisine in years. I wonder if Twilight, being a princess and all, has to deal with this, she pondered. It was quite surreal, eating in the castle's main dining hall for the first time in years, with her old mentor sitting at the head of the table beside her. Indeed, everything seemed to be exactly as Sunset remembered. The paintings, displayed plates, and other decadent decor was exactly where it had been since she had lost her meal here. The chef had served Sunset her old favorite, black bean and cheese enchiladas with the hottest sauce they had. Even the chef was exactly the same pony as when Sunset had lived here as a filly. As if Canterlot Castle itself was as ageless as the princess who called it home. Or rather, princesses now. The second princess in question saw Sunset stay back down. My apologies, Miss Simba. This is not the place for me to confront my sister about such a minor matter. Luna leaned forward and tried to give Sunset a reassuring smile. In fact, I think that you and I are not so very different. Of course, Celestia and Luna had gotten Sunset cut up on the events that occurred between them. Hearing of Luna's fall for grace as she took the form of Nightmare Moon, only to be eventually defeated and subsequently forgiven, gave Sunset some hope for her own relationship with Celestia. That hope was short-lived, as she then remembered that Luna had been possessed by some dark force before her rebellion against Celestia. When Sunset betrayed her, she did entirely of her own volition. Chancing a glance at her former mentor, Sunset thought she saw her do the same. What's more, Sunset thought she saw a flicker of something in Celestia's eyes, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. Celestia made to say something, but then one of the guards entered and whispered something in her ear. Is that so? Uh-huh, right. Okay, just give me a minute. The White Princess turned to face her ex-protege. My apologies, Sunset, but it appears Luna and I are needed elsewhere at the previous time. Well, needed for what? Asked Luna, confused. You know quite well, Luna. The ambassadors from the here? No! Celestia nodded glumly. They certainly know how to time things in the most annoying way. Regardless, as unpleasant as the next hour is going to be, it shouldn't be much longer than that. So, it might be in your best interest, Sunset, to just wait for me in the library. My guards will escort you there. Unicorn perked up at the suggestion. Okay. Judging from the muffled sound of what seemed to be both the princesses shouting, along with an unidentified member of male voices, it was sounded, to Sunset at least, that there was a war on the horizon. In fact, Sunset was located nowhere near the Royal Throne Hall, where said argument was taking place, was an indication that any party without godlike hearing protection would probably go deaf if they were in the same room as the princess. However, Sunset managed to tune out the world around her, like he had so many times in her previous life, including the guard who was subtly watching her. Instead, was more interested in the large pile of books he had compiled. Specifically, she had selected books about the Crystal Empire and its most infamous resident, the twice-late King Sombra. An entire empire, from 1,000 years to the future. Sunset pondered as she deftly cleared her eyes along the printed words. Come to think of it, there was a lot of stuff getting relevance being thrown forward 1,000 years. Probably explains why this book is so new. While the books in the dwindling to read pile and the increasing and already read piles were old tomes that had been doubles lent down from the Crystal Empire's own library. The majority of texts had been printed within the last 2 years. Admittedly, there wasn't much about the Crystal Empire to begin with, given the 1,000-year time jump, but it was only supposed to keep Sunset occupied for a little while. Holy crap, gaped Sunset, a 9-month-old newspaper in her hose. On the front page was the unicorn mare from earlier, one raspberry barrel posing a nervous smile on a raised hoof, while perched on a golden-green phoenix. According to the article, the phoenix was her pet by the name Heliodor. What's more alarming, though, was the detail of how she had been pardoned from the death sentence by Celestia, under innumerable crimes of committed dark magic. Yet, despite the amended silence of life servitude for the crown, she was allowed to keep living in Ponyfield and retain her inherited title of princess as the only known member of the once extinguished Crystal Empire line. But it was the article's depictions of what had happened that drew Sunset's full attention. Evidently, back on Nightmare Night, Raspberry Barrel had unintentionally allowed a black crystal that she had disguised as a valuable diamond and eaten by Spike the Dragon. She nearly killed it by accident, it seemed. Then later to trial, the revelation that Prince Blueblood, where had she heard that name before, had stolen, and abused Heliodor had sent Raspberry to her raids. She had nearly killed not only him, but all 4 Alicorn princesses. There was a 4th Alicorn? Simply by overpowering them. And their appearance, Thusset said, can't be a coincidence. There's a sight I never expected to see again, Celestia said with a slight smile. She stood a few paces behind Sunset, scaring the absolute hell out of her. Sunset bit back a comment about Celestia's old habit of sneaking up on her, subtly knowing how she seamlessly gone back into being a bookish nerd again. It was a shocking contrast to the kind of person she tended to be as a human. As if reading Sunset's thoughts, Celestia's warm demeanor vanished. Now, before we were rudely interrupted by those ambassadors, I was going to ask you for more details about the situation back in the human world. To be honest, I didn't really know what I was looking for myself, but now I think I do, replied the firing mayor, looking at the newspaper with telekinesis. Seriously, a pony who uses dark magic is the bloody descendant of this King Sombra ass, and nearly killed you and all the other princesses is still allowed to be walking around in public? Celestia frowned. Celestia couldn't keep her ears from folding back. Raspberry Barrel is a very complex pony, but she is far from a threat to any pony. In fact, she's proven a very great asset to Equestria. I wish I could believe you, Princess, but you see, I have reason to believe she's the source of my problems back home. Sunset then proceeded to tell Celestia about her living situation back in the human world. She told her about how Twilight's human counterpart had become the sister she had never had, and how the poor girl was being tortured to insanity with horrifying nightmares. Nightmares that featured equestrian ponies. Celestia studied Sunset skeptically. I don't see how this raspberry relates to Raspberry, because Twilight described her attacker in those dreams as another unicorn who looked similar to me, with darker coloration, and was attacking her with some sort of smooth or yak-like substance. Yak? It's like a goopy human toy, but that's not important. What is important is that the creature attacking Twilight used dark magic and looked exactly like Raspberry Barrel. That can't be just a coincidence. Celestia did not say anything at first, considering Sunset's words carefully. After some deliberation, she chanced to say, I see your point, Sunset. The potential truth behind your statement is concerning with regards to how closely related this world is to that of humans. However, I do not believe Raspberry Barrel would willingly do such harm onto any pony, or any human. Sunset couldn't believe it. She had finally had the first decent lead on whatever was harming her sister. Finally had a name to go with the face, and here Celestia stood, defending that pony. Before she knew what she was doing, Sunset stomped a hoof on the marble floor and glared defiantly at the princess. I don't care! I know it's her! Sunset immediately took a step backward, ears folding back at her own outbursts. Last time she blew up Celestia like that hadn't ended well for any of them. The look of disappointment on Celestia's face was scathing. Princess, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Celestia closed her eyes and took a piece of breath. It's okay, Sunset. What I was going to suggest is you go to Ponyville. Keep an eye on Raspberry. Even if she didn't mean the fact that Raspberry still has some control issues when it comes to the effects of her magic, the recent incident in Lonesome Dove is any indication. Sunset wasn't quite sure what incident Celestia was referring to, but she didn't remember reading anything about Lonesome Dove in the articles she had found. Before Sunset could inquire further into the matter, Celestia continued. Additionally, I think you could benefit from spending some time with Princess Twilight and her friends. I'm sure they'll do everything in their power to get to the bottom of this as well. Okay, Sunset nodded. As it is, you probably need to go back to Ponyville to secure your lodgings. I'll prepare a skywagon for you back to Golden Oaks, as I'm sure Twilight can help you with that. Just checking, Princess, but this isn't going to lead me to a worldwide traveling adventure where I'm going to have to get into some time travel shenanigans, am I? No, I'm pretty positive it's not that type of story. Oh, thank goodness. With everything said, Celestia turned to leave. Before she could, though, Sunset felt the need to say one more thing. Princess? Celestia turned and looked over her shoulder at her former student. Thank you for giving me another chance. I know you're worried about Twilight, Sunset. Celestia said. Her voice took on a dark tone. but I would strongly advise against any more violent outbursts during your stay here. It was evening by the time Sunset had arrived in the Golden Fox Library. Celestia's son sitting at her first date back in Equestria. Something seemed off about the tree structure as Sunset approached. The blinds on all the windows were closed, and by all outward appearances, Golden Oaks was devoid of life. Feeling a cold dread began to well up in Sunset's simmer as he slowly opened the library's front door. Inside, the library was pitch black. Sunset carefully crept to the Twilight's abode, feeling more ill at ease with every passing moment. Maybe Raspberry Barrel was behind this. Maybe that demon unicorn found that Sunset was onto her, took care of Twilight, and Spike was now lying in wait for her. Hello? Nearly all the lights switched on, for all Sunset knew, the entire town was now packed at the library. Surprise! They all shouted. Sunset could feel her left eye twitching slightly. No instinctual response to her inability to process the rapid turn of events was fast enough. What were they all doing here? Certainly this had to be some kind of mistake, given that no pony would bother throwing a surprise party at the drop of a hat for a pony you weren't even sure would be back. That required some kind of inexplicable foresight that Sunset could only be able to conceive of possibly existing at all, due to it now being how Pinkie Pie... Of course, thought Sunset, her nerves slowly less jumping upon seeing the smiling face of the pink mare with balloons on her flank. It seemed to be wherever there was a Pinkie Pie, in whatever form, there was always something to celebrate with a party when they were concerned. Let me guess, came from the voice of Princess Twilight, looking out for the crowd up to her reality-jumping friend. Pinkie Pie doesn't throw parties quite at random in the human world, compared to the one currently making 3 balloon animals at once over there. Sunset shook her head. Nope. Though that may more do how different human life is compared to pony life, especially being a teen in high school. The unending amounts of homework, for instance, would slow any pony down. What's wrong with homework? Asked Twilight, a totally straight face. Either you really are a good liar, Twilight, or... Sunset then just remembered who she was talking to. Never mind. I forgot you're a total workaholic when it comes to academic stuff. Twilight, like how Pinkie Pie's ready to throw a party? Always, replied the yellow mare, chuckling alongside the alicorn. Though, since that's the case, and we're both familiar with human versions of your friends, are their pony counterparts just as similar? Oh, yes, are they ever? Right down to initially not liking you, to be honest. With a quick sigh, nod of her head, Sunset glanced in the indicated direction to see Rainbow trying not to be obvious as he was watching Sunset's every move closely. Quick scan revealed the same was for the other 3 in question, so it was hard to tell if Fluttershy was actually watching Sunset or was glancing around quickly because he was nervous. Just like the Fluttershy I know. Thought Sunset with a smile. Oh, by the way, what are your lodging arrangements? Asked the princess, catching Sunset off guard. I don't have any at the moment, though I was thinking about renting a room at the inn or something. Did Princess Celestia give you some money, or do you have some invisible funny bags? You certainly didn't seem to be carrying any money when you walked in a few minutes ago. Sunset's huff firmly connected to her face. Suffice to say, the action hurt a lot more as a pony than as a human. Ah, yes, I kinda need money to sleep at an inn. Money I don't have. Do you think they accept debit cards? Debit cards? Oh, right. Those don't exist in Equestria. Sunset was now in a new dilemma. Without means of getting a rented room, she needed to bunk with some pony. While in the human world, she shared a house, and sometimes the same bed with Twilight, it seemed appropriate to ask to see with Princess Twilight. But who else could... Oh, do you need someplace to stay for a while? Pinkie asked, jumping out of nowhere. There's a spare guest room in the Suki Court. That's where I live, and also where I work so I can get paid for making my own breakfast. I'm sure I can ask Mr. and Mrs. Skeet to lend you. Yeah, that'd be great, said Sunset, beaming. That is, if it isn't an inconvenience for them. As long as you don't need nighttime room service, they'll be fine. Trust me, Pound and Pumpkin, the twin False Gate staff, won't like it if you take their parents' attention away from them in the middle of the night when they need a diaper change. Oh, great babies, thought Sunset, trying to smile faltering a little. Still, will be more homey filled than living at an inn for a few days. I've dealt with human twins, so hopefully pony babies aren't too different. The rest of the night was more enjoyable, at least for Sunset. She met with the other main friends of the princess who she had met with, and while they were all honest about their concerns, well placed, given that Twilight says he almost was killed by Sunset. They were still willing to be more open about when they initially wanted to, when the princess fouls for her. Sunset couldn't help feel a little vindicated when Twilight took her aside and said what had become Spike. You grounded him? Unicorn gasped. Twilight nodded silently. I never had to punish him to such an extent before. But sent you off willy-nilly to possibly face Celestia's wrath? I hope you're worth the month of anything it looks he's gonna be shooting me afterwards.
He deserved it!
Hey, you can order around. Your Spike is much more disciplined than the one I'm stuck with. I'm guessing he's not housebroken then? The two mayors laughed, both glad they could find some common ground and humor. However, when the time came for the party to end, with Piggy having to escort Sunset to the bakery, Unicorn didn't know all the parties of the party, so he hadn't seen one trace of Raspberry Barrel. Later, let's all to the room on the second floor of Sugar Goo Corner. Sunset looked up into the night sky through the room's window. The first time she see it always meant to be. The signs of Princess Luna and not of Celestia. She often wondered the stars that were in the heavens here in Equestria were shining once whose light reached the night sky, back through the window at 482 Golden Oaks Drive, San Palermo. They are the silent witness to what I did over the last 4 years, thought the unicorn. There's so much that could have been different as he surrendered himself to sense, returned to the first possible chance after 30 moons had passed. Instead of blowing those 4 years of trying to steal the crown. Wait. Sunset's eyes shot open as it occurred to her. If 30 moons was approximately 30 months, on a 12-month calendar, it was about 2.5 years. If the mirror only ever opened at 2.5-year intervals, that meant Sunset should never been able to go back as he did. It should have been 5 years when Sunset went back to steal the crown, when it had only been 4. I didn't have realized this before. Esley complaining on Sunset's focus on her vain ambition, keeping her from thinking about anything else. Still, it didn't explain why the mirror didn't follow its own rules. Sunset tried to push those thoughts from her mind. She needed to sleep. It had been a long, tiring day, but very least. The returned Mare could close her eyes with the knowledge Celestia went and outright tried to destroy her. She faced her old mentor's judgment eventually. When she finally had the first steps she could track in saving Twilight, maybe redeeming herself at long last.